Wildlife Service finished a science-based recovery plan for Mexican wolves. What's the holdup? What are the next steps? We will go with Mike, Ed, and Larry.
I don't rightly know why they haven't finished a recovery plan. The only plan that's ever been done for the Mexican wolf was signed in 1982. It doesn't present recovery criteria. It just says, geez, wouldn't it be nice if there were 100 wolves somewhere? That'd be great. And a captive breeding program to just slow the loss of genetic diversity. I've been on every Mexican wolf team since 1995. Dave, Ed, and I were on the 90 or the 2002 team or some doggone thing. John Boostich was on that team as well. Now John and I are on the existing team with Doug, and Rich Fredrickson will speak to it later today. If I'm going to be plainly honest with you guys here today, there is no recovery plan for the Mexican wolf because the United States Fish and Wildlife Service is unable to stand the political pressure that comes with developing a plan. Now, you think, well, gee whiz, what does that mean? Well, I think it's a harbinger of a very difficult future for the Mexican wolf because a recovery plan in and of itself is not a hard thing. Gray wolves are one of the most researched large mammals in the world. You look at Dave and Luigi's book, there's page after page after page of literature cited. We know a great deal about gray wolves. Assembling a science-based plan that speaks to recovery is not that difficult. If the service can't withstand the pressure from developing a Mexican wolf recovery plan, imagine what they'll do in face of pressure to implement. That's the heavy lift. Planning is one thing. Implementing is an entirely different beast. A very difficult exercise. I think the service is stuck, and they're principally stuck for political reasons, and that's why there's no Mexican wolf recovery plan.
And Ed.
Well, I think the Mexican wolf recovery program is by far, I'm not sure about all endangered species, but among wolves it's light years more difficult. That you've got an animal that was escaped in the wild, you've got all the scientific debate about taxonomy, which seems to change every day. You've got grazing practices, public land issues, international borders. It's just a very tough lift. It's hard to figure out what to do and how to do it. And I think in terms of the service has been trying to get a recovery plan together. I mean, we were on a team that was clearly dysfunctional. I think several of us recommended after a couple meetings, which you ought to fire us all and try again. I think the service needs to think maybe about going back to more of a stakeholder model of trying not to have science lead the parade, but maybe come out a little after that. But I think Mike is right. Politically, it's a very tough lift. They're looking, it's one thing to develop a plan. Like, you know, we need 100,000 wolves running throughout the United States, including Kansas, all the historic range. Imagine trying to implement that. So it's easy to come up with a plan if there's no possible God's green earth you could ever implement it, and the science may not back some of it. So I think the service is trying to come up with a Mexican wolf recovery plan. I think maybe they got the cart before the horse in terms of getting partnerships with the states and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, biologically, it's just a really tough one. They're not connected to 60,000 wolves in Canada. They don't have Yellowstone Park in central Idaho and all this great habitat. Seasonal livestock grazing. And I think that's why the service is struggling, is they can't see a way that will lead to wolf restoration that's actually implementable. And so they beg off of it and just do another study or postpone.
All right, for the last word, Larry.
When you first posed the question, my first thought was to answer tritely, well, you should ask the service. Then my second thought after listening to Mike and Ed was, Mike was on every recovery team, Ed was on recovery teams. Oh, I think I see why the service hasn't been able to put together.
I get to rebut that, don't I?
I'm simply quoting your statements. What I'd like to do is take a different tack, though, and I would offer that in the world of wolf conservation, the most important recovery plan will be when we finally get a successful outcome on a recovery plan for Mexican wolf. The reason that will be the most important recovery plan is because it will include critical, very, very difficult components. The difficult components that have made it so hard to come up with a recovery plan. Unlike the Northern Rockies, Mexican wolf will be entirely managed and recovered within working landscapes where there's a whole social fabric of people. Think of the range of the Mexican wolf. If you take the 4 border states in the U.S., and I think it's 5 or 6 border states in Mexico, and combine them, they encompass the bulk of the heavy lifting where Mexican wolf recovery will occur. It would be the 3rd largest economy on the globe. Think about how hard it's going to be to do recovery in working landscapes with the 3rd largest economy in the globe, circumscribing the area that you're working. It can be done. We have the ability. It won't be simple. It will be binational, and it will be working with people who live on the ground. That makes it challenging. It makes it the most important.